The air in Narita Airport felt wrong. As I stepped off the plane, a chill crawled up my spine despite the humid July heat. My guidebook promised a dream vacation, but the vacant stares of the airport staff whispered otherwise. That night, in my tiny Tokyo hotel room, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway pacing. Pausing, pacing again. My clock read 3:03 a.m. When I peeked through the peephole, nothing was there, but the floor was wet as if someone had just stood weeping. The next day, I took the Shinkansen to Kyoto, hoping to escape the unease, but as the train sped through the countryside, I noticed a woman in a white dress sitting across the aisle. She wasn't moving, not even blinking. Her lips were slightly parted, and her eyes, so dark they looked like pits, seemed to follow me no matter where I looked. When I finally gathered the courage to ask if she was okay, the seat was empty. The conductor walked by and asked if I needed anything, but when I pointed at the seat, he just shook his head and said no one had been sitting there for hours. In Kyoto, I stayed at a traditional ryokan. The room was beautiful with the tatami mats and a sliding door that looked out onto a small garden. But on the second night, I woke up to the sound of someone breathing heavily right next to my ear. I froze, my heart thundering in my chest. The breath was warm and damp, smelling of old flowers and decay. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it would go away. After what felt like an eternity, the breathing stopped. I opened my eyes slowly, and in the dim light from the garden, I saw a handprint on the ceiling, small and wet, like a child's hand. By the fourth day, I was desperate to get through the trip. I visited a famous shrine in the mountains, hoping the sacred place would bring me peace. But as I walked up the stone steps, the trees around me seemed to close in. The air grew cold. Even though the sun was high, I heard whispers in Japanese, fragments of words I couldn't understand. My phone, which had a full battery a moment ago, went black. I took a picture of the shrine gate anyway, and when I looked at the photo on my camera, there was a woman in white standing behind me, so close her face was right by my ear. She was smiling. That night, I locked myself in my hotel room in Osaka. I pushed a chair against the door and checked every corner. The silence was deafening. At 3:03 a.m., the clock on my nightstand started flickering. The footsteps returned, this time from inside the room. I could hear them circling the bed, slow and deliberate. The air grew heavy, and my breath came out in white puffs like winter. I pulled the blanket over my head and recited every prayer I could remember. Then the footsteps stopped right beside me. A soft, childlike voice whispered in my ear, "Why did you come here?" I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. On the final day, I boarded a train to Tokyo Airport, counting the minutes until I could leave. The train was nearly empty, and I had a whole row to myself. 30 minutes outside of Tokyo, the lights flickered, and the train suddenly slowed down. The woman in white, the one from the first train, was now sitting right next to me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She turned her head slowly, and her face was made of wrinkled wet paper melting at the edges. She whispered, "Don't leave, stay with me." I closed my eyes and screamed until the train came to a full stop. When I opened them, she was gone. I ran through Narita Airport, not stopping until I was at the gate. Even as I boarded the plane and took my seat, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I spun around, but no one was there. As the plane took off, I looked out the window and saw my reflection. It was smiling. I never took a trip to Japan. On the third day in Kyoto, I visited a bamboo grove said to be enchanted. The tourists thinned as I wandered deeper, until I was alone. The wind died and the bamboo stopped swaying. Then I heard a woman's voice humming an old folk song, her breath close to my ear. I spun around, no one, but my shadow on the ground had grown a second head twitching independently. I ran, and the humming followed, growing louder, until it merged with my own panicked heartbeats. Day 5 took me to a remote mountain shrine near Nikko. The air was thin and cold, and the only sound was the crunch of gravel under my shoes. An elderly priest shuffled out from the shadows, his eyes clouded with age. He grabbed my wrist with surprising strength and warned me in broken English, "Do not look behind the altar." I nodded, but of course, curiosity won the moment he left. The shrine was silent, dust motes dancing in the dim light. Behind the wooden panel, something was pinned with a rusted hairpin. It was a dried human ear, shriveled and brown, the cartilage still visible. My stomach turned. That night, back at the hotel, I couldn't shake the image. I took a long, hot shower, hoping to wash away the dread. When I stepped out, the mirror was completely fogged up, but there was no steam from the shower. The glass was cold to the touch. Then in the condensation, a small handprint appeared. A child's hand, fingers spread wide. Then another, then dozens. Tiny hands pressing against the glass from inside as if someone was trapped behind it, desperate to get out. My heart hammered in my chest. I grabbed a wooden chair and smashed the mirror with all my strength. The glass shattered, raining down in jagged pieces, but when the shards settled on the bathroom floor, they spelled out a name I'd never heard, Yukiana. By last night in Osaka, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I packed frantically, throwing clothes into my suitcase without folding them, desperate to leave the hotel room. Every shadow seemed to move on its own, and the silence felt too heavy. Then, at exactly 2:21 a.m., a knock came. 3 slow, deliberate taps on the door. My heart stopped. I crept closer. My breath caught in my throat and peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but through the crack at the bottom of the door, I saw them. Pale, bloodless feet, standing perfectly still. I backed away, telling myself it was just my imagination, but the knocking began again, harder this time. 3 taps turned into a pounding, fists hitting the wood so hard it rattled the frame. Then came the screaming, a high, wailing sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I covered my ears and curled up on the floor, praying for dawn. When the first light finally crept through the curtains, the noise stopped. I waited, trembling, and then slowly opened the door. The hallway was empty, but on the carpet just in front of my door, there was a single wet footprint. It pointed inward, not outward. Someone had come inside. I checked the room, my hands shaking. Then I saw my passport on the dresser. Someone had traced words on it in dried ink. "We've been waiting for you." I didn't look back. I grabbed my things and left Osaka that morning, thinking I had escaped. But 7 days later, safe in my own home, I heard them again. 3 slow taps on my bedroom door.